Did you know that one of the greatest movies ever made almost never got finished? Touch of Evil came out in 1958, and it was made by a director who wasn't even supposed to be directing it. He walked onto the set with a wild idea, and everything changed. The movie became a masterpiece, a dark, twisted story about corruption and truth that still shocks people today. But getting there? It was like watching a magician pull rabbits out of a broken hat. Behind the scenes, there were secret tricks, accidents that became genius moments, and weird decisions that shouldn't have worked but did. Let's dive in and discover 20 weird and amazing facts about Touch of Evil. Fact number 20. The famous opening shot. Nobody could copy. The opening scene of Touch of Evil is legendary. A bomb gets planted in a car. The camera doesn't cut. It just follows and follows and follows. We walk down the street. We see the car. We hear music. We feel tension building like a storm coming. The camera keeps moving, dancing through the streets. And finally, boom! The bomb explodes. It's one continuous shot that lasts about 3.5 minutes. People have tried to copy it for 65 years. Film students study it. Other directors try to make shots like it. But here's the weird part. The director, Orson Welles, didn't have perfect technology. He had cameras that were heavy and difficult to move. The equipment was clunky and old, yet he made something so smooth, so beautiful, that modern filmmakers with computers and fancy gear still can't match it. He did it by pure imagination and stubbornness. His crew had to rehearse the scene over and over and over. One mistake, the whole thing failed. One person out of place, start again. The actors had to hit their marks perfectly while walking. The camera operator had to glide like a ghost. It took incredible focus and skill, but they nailed it. What looked like poetry on screen was actually military precision hidden behind the curtain. Fact number 19. Orson Welles wasn't supposed to direct. He was only acting. This is wild. Orson Welles was hired to act in Touch of Evil. That was it. He was going to play the main character, a corrupt police captain named Hank Quinlan. He would say his lines, collect his paycheck, and go home. But then Welles read the script and thought, I can make this so much better. He walked up to the producer and said, let me direct it. The producer probably laughed at first. But somehow Welles convinced him. He literally took over the whole movie. He rewrote scenes. He changed how actors performed. He invented new camera tricks. He made the story darker and weirder. All while still playing the main character? Imagine being an actor and also the boss of everyone on set. Imagine having to act opposite people while also telling them they're doing it wrong. This was a huge risk. If the movie failed, it would be Welles's fault. If it was great, he would get all the credit. But that wasn't even the strangest part. The studio didn't really trust him. They thought he was too wild, too crazy, too unpredictable. So they kept a nervous eye on him the whole time. Welles didn't care. He just kept making decisions that confused people until they saw the final result and realized he was right. What started as an acting job became a revolution in filmmaking. Fact number 18. The star, Charlton Heston, was shocked by his makeup. Charlton Heston was a huge movie star. He was strong, handsome, and powerful. He was supposed to play a Mexican police officer named Miguel Vargas. But when Welles saw him, he said, "You need to look different." So they gave him dark makeup and a dark wig. They changed his whole appearance. Heston walked into the makeup room ready for a normal day and walked out looking like a completely different person. He barely recognized himself. For weeks, he performed scenes in this makeup under hot studio lights. The makeup would run, it would itch, it would feel heavy and fake. But here's the thing. On camera, it worked perfectly. Heston became the character. The audience believed he was a Mexican detective trying to uncover truth in a corrupt city. The makeup choice was actually controversial at the time. Some people criticized it. But it was bold, and it worked. It showed that Welles wasn't interested in easy choices. He wanted reality on screen, even if it meant making an American movie star look completely different. Heston trusted him, even when confused. What felt uncomfortable in the moment became art on the screen. Fact number 17. They shot the movie in real border town streets. Touch of Evil is set in a dirty, dangerous border town where crime happens on every corner and nobody follows rules. Welles could have built a fake town in a studio. That would have been safer and easier to control. Instead, he took his crew to real streets. They filmed in actual locations near the California-Mexico border. The streets were real. The buildings were real. The danger felt real. When actors walked through scenes, they weren't pretending. They were actually in places where shady things happened. This gave the movie an honest feeling that you can't fake in a studio. But it was risky. You never knew what might happen on a real street. Crowds would gather and watch. Noise would interrupt scenes. The weather would change. A real person might walk into your shot. Street life doesn't care about cameras. Yet this chaos somehow made the movie better. It made everything feel gritty and true. The camera caught real moments between real scenes. You can feel the danger in every frame because danger was actually there. Welles understood that sometimes the best filmmaking happens when you leave the safety of a studio and trust the real world to help tell your story. Control wasn't everything. Sometimes surrender to reality made magic happen. Fact number 16. The village that never got its name. Right in the movie, the border town is called Los Robles, which means the Oaks in Spanish. But in the script, it was supposed to be something else. Different versions of the script had different names. Some scenes were filmed with one name, other scenes with another. Then Welles changed his mind. He wanted a new name that sounded right when he heard it. He settled on Los Robles, but some dialogue had already been recorded. So the town has a confusing identity. If you listen carefully, you might hear different names mentioned. It's like the town itself was confused about who it was. This wasn't a mistake that got fixed. It was left in the final movie as a strange ghost of the production's chaos. Most people never notice it. But film experts have spent hours researching this weird detail. It became a famous little mystery about the film. Welles never explained it. Maybe he did it on purpose to make the town feel dreamlike and unreal. Maybe it was just accident and he didn't care enough to fix it. Either way, it became part of the movie's weird personality. The town's identity crisis matched the movie's identity crisis. Nothing was quite what it seemed. Fact number 15. Marlene Dietrich broke character and cried real tears. Marlene Dietrich was a legendary actress. She had been in hundreds of movies. She was tough, professional, and never showed emotion on set unless it was in the script. But in one scene of Touch of Evil, something unexpected happened. She plays a fortune teller in a seedy room. She's supposed to be cynical and hard. But as she performed her scene, real sadness came over her face. Real tears started rolling down her cheeks. The cameras were rolling. Welles kept filming. He knew this was special. He didn't yell, "Cut!" He let her feel whatever she was feeling. After they finished, nobody asked her why she cried. Nobody made it weird. She just wiped her eyes and moved on. But that moment stayed in the movie. You can see genuine human emotion breaking through a character's shell. Some of the greatest acting moments aren't planned. They're accidents. They're moments when the actor's real heart touches the character's heart. What started as a professional performance became something deeply human. That's what happened to Dietrich. The director trusted the moment enough to let it live. Fact number 14. The sound design was revolutionary. But created by accident sound in movies was tricky in 1958. You had to record it carefully. You had to get it right because editing was difficult. But Welles and his sound team decided to do something wild. They layered sounds on top of each other intentionally. Conversations happened at the same time, car sounds mixed with music. Gunshots echoed strangely. It was supposed to sound confusing and chaotic, just like the story. Most filmmakers at the time kept sound clean and clear. But Welles said, "No, let's make it messy. Let's make it real." Technical people told him it wouldn't work. Audiences wouldn't understand dialogue if other sounds covered it. But Welles trusted his instinct. He built sound the same way he built images, with layers and depth. When you watch Touch of Evil, sound isn't just something you hear, it's something you feel. The sound pulls you into the corrupt world. You feel lost and confused, just like the character. This was years ahead of its time. Movies didn't sound like this. It was experimental. It was weird, but it worked perfectly. Welles had accidentally invented a new way to use sound in cinema. What broke the old rules became the foundation of modern filmmaking. Fact number 13. Janet Leigh's famous shower scene meant something dark. Janet Leigh plays a young woman who gets trapped in a seedy motel room. There's a famous scene where she takes a shower. It's shot from unusual angles. You see her fear. You see the danger around her. The scene is famous because it's so uncomfortable to watch. But here's what people don't know. This scene was shot in a real motel room. It was dirty and genuinely scary. Janet Leigh wasn't acting the fear. She was really scared. The room smelled bad. The shower was grimy. The walls felt dangerous. Welles wanted her to feel the real discomfort of the character. So he didn't protect her. He let her be in a genuinely unpleasant place. She performed the scene in real fear. On camera, you see true vulnerability. You see a real woman in real danger. This was controversial. Some people thought Welles was being cruel to his actress. But Leigh understood what he was doing. She trusted him. She knew he was trying to create something honest. Years later, she said that moment taught her about acting. Real fear produced real performances. That wasn't being mean, that was being truthful. Art sometimes requires discomfort. What looked like cruelty was actually respect for the craft. Fact number 12. The studio tried to cut the movie in half. After filming finished, the studio executives watched the rough version. They didn't understand it. They thought it was too dark, too weird, too confusing. They wanted Welles to cut it down and make it lighter. They suggested removing entire scenes, entire ideas, entire themes. They wanted to turn Touch of Evil into a regular crime story with a happy ending. Welles said absolutely not. He fought them. He argued. He refused to compromise. The studio was paying for the movie, so technically they had power over him. But Welles had something stronger than money. He had conviction. He believed in his vision so strongly that he couldn't back down. He kept the dark ending. He kept the confusing moments. He kept the strange beauty of it all. The studio executives finally gave up arguing. They released the movie as Welles made it. But they did something sneaky. They released it as a second feature, meaning it played on the bottom half of a double feature, not as the main movie. They didn't promote it much. They didn't believe in it. But audiences found it anyway. They loved it. What the studio thought was too weird, audiences thought was genius. Welles was right. The studio was wrong. Time proved him right. Tate. Fact number 11. One scene was shot 27 times. Welles was a perfectionist. There was a scene where two actors had to walk through a crowded street while having a conversation. The timing had to be perfect. The words had to match the movement. The camera had to glide exactly right. The extras had to be in the right place. On the first try, not quite right. Try 2. Close, but not perfect. Try 3 through 26, getting better, but still not exactly what Welles imagined. On try 27, everything aligned. The light was perfect. The actors found the right rhythm. The camera moved like water. The extras were exactly where they needed to be. Welles yelled "cut," and everyone knew they had it. 27 times. Most directors would have settled by try 5 or 6, but Welles believed that the difference between good and great was sometimes just persistence. He wasn't cruel about it. He didn't yell at people. He just kept trying. He kept trusting that the perfect moment existed if they kept searching for it. And he was right. That 27th take is in the final movie, and you can feel the perfection. What took obsession looked like effortless beauty on screen. Fact number 10. A secret camera. Captured unauthorized footage. During breaks, one crew member brought a small camera and filmed things Welles didn't know about. Actors joking around, behind-the-scenes chaos, real conversations, technical people struggling with equipment. It was never supposed to be in the movie. But years later, some of this footage was discovered. It showed the human side of filmmaking. It showed Welles being silly. It showed actors being real. It showed how much work happened that nobody ever sees. This unauthorized footage became more valuable than anyone imagined. It proved something important. Great movies aren't made by perfection. They're made by imperfect humans trying hard and failing and trying again. The secret footage showed the truth of creation. It showed that behind every perfect moment on screen, there's chaos and laughter and frustration and hope. Decades after the movie was finished, people were still discovering these hidden moments. It was like archaeologists finding a time capsule. The unauthorized camera had preserved something that nobody asked for, but everyone needed to see. What was supposed to be hidden revealed the most important truth of all. Fact number 9. The movie's ending was improvised. The final scene of Touch of Evil is famous. It's dark and sad and strange. The main character dies in a weird, lonely way. His body floats in the river. It's not a typical ending. Heroes usually win, villains usually lose. But in this movie, the villain dies badly, and it doesn't feel like a victory. It feels empty. Here's the strange part. Welles and the actor playing Hank Quinlan improvised part of the ending. They didn't have a completely finished script for that moment. Welles said, "Do this," and the actor figured it out as they went. They were making it up in real time, with cameras rolling. Some of the dialogue wasn't written down before they performed it. Some of the movements weren't planned. It was jazz, improvisational art. On a big movie set, this would be terrifying. Everything is supposed to be planned. But Welles trusted the moment. He trusted the actor. He trusted that sometimes the best art happens when you let go of control. And he was right. The ending feels raw and real and unpredictable because it partially was. The actors weren't reciting words they'd memorized. They were discovering them in the moment. What looked scripted was actually partly spontaneous. Fact number 8. The cinematographer had to invent new lighting techniques. The cinematographer, the person in charge of how the movie looks, faced an impossible challenge. Welles wanted deep shadows and bright light at the same time. He wanted you to see characters' faces, but also feel mystery around them. He wanted the image to be beautiful and ugly at the same time. Standard lighting techniques wouldn't work. The cinematographer had to experiment. He used lights in weird positions. He bounced light off unusual surfaces. He created shadows intentionally. He mixed bright and dark in ways that shouldn't work but did. Other cinematographers thought he was crazy, but the results were revolutionary. The way Touch of Evil looks influenced how thousands of movies are lit today. That cinematographer solved a problem by inventing a solution that didn't exist before. He couldn't follow the rulebook because the rulebook didn't have the answers. So he wrote new rules. What seemed impossible became the foundation for modern cinema. He proved that constraints aren't walls, they're invitations to create something new. Fact number 7. One actor had never been in a movie. Before there's a small character in the film, a night clerk in a motel. He has a few lines. He appears for maybe 2 minutes, but he's perfectly cast. He feels real. His performance is believable. Here's the secret. That actor had never been in a movie before. He was probably hired because he looked right for the part. He probably showed up nervous, not knowing what to expect. Welles directed him like he would any professional actor. He treated him with respect. He gave him clear directions. The actor rose to the occasion. He delivered his lines. He hit his marks. He became part of a masterpiece. Then he probably disappeared back into regular life, not realizing he was in a legendary film. This happens sometimes. A person gets one chance in one great movie and then fades away. But that person's work lives forever. Every time someone watches Touch of Evil, they see that nervous first-time actor being perfect. He probably doesn't know how many people have watched him. He probably doesn't know his 2 minutes mattered. But it did. It mattered so much. What started as a small part became immortal. Fact number 6. The movie's musical score was rewritten at the last minute. The composer wrote beautiful orchestral music for Touch of Evil. It was complex and sophisticated. But then Welles heard it and said, "No, make it stranger, make it unsettling." The composer had to go back to the drawing board. He had days to rewrite everything. Instead of beautiful orchestration, he created weird, dissonant sounds. Instruments clashed, melodies twisted. Nothing resolved neatly. It shouldn't have worked. Good movie music is usually pretty, usually comforting. But this music was the opposite. It made you uncomfortable. It made you feel the moral darkness of the story. The new score was revolutionary. It proved that movie music doesn't have to be beautiful to be perfect. It just has to match the truth of the story. This decision came late in production. It was a risk, but it was the right risk. The final music is one of the most memorable aspects of the film. The composer's crisis became a creative breakthrough. What seemed like a problem in the last minute became genius in the final product. Fact number 5. Welles directed scenes while doing other things. This is wild. During filming, Welles would sometimes act in a scene while also directing the cameras. He'd deliver his lines as an actor, then yell, "Cut!" then immediately give notes to the other actors about how to do it better. Then he'd step back in front of the camera and do the scene again, this time as both actor and leader. Imagine holding that much in your brain at once. You're feeling your character's emotions while also thinking about cinematography. You're remembering your lines while also thinking about how everyone else should perform. You're being vulnerable as an actor while also being in charge as a boss. Most people can't do one of those things well. Welles did both at the same time. His crew was amazed. Sometimes they were confused, but mostly they were just trying to keep up. His energy was infectious. His focus was incredible. His willingness to do everything meant nobody could slack off or give less than 100%. He set the standard by working harder than anyone else. What looked like multitasking was actually extreme dedication to craft. Fact number 4. There's a ghost reflection in one famous shot. If you look very carefully at one crucial scene, you can see something strange. In a mirror or reflection, there's a figure that shouldn't be there. Some people say it's just a crew member who accidentally got in the shot. Other people say it was left in on purpose. Others say it's genuinely inexplicable. Nobody has ever confirmed the truth. Film experts have studied this moment for decades. Books have been written about it. Theories exist about why it's there. But the mystery remains unsolved. This one tiny, almost invisible detail has generated endless discussion. It shows how much art lives in the details. It shows how one small anomaly can create mystery and intrigue. Maybe Welles put it there intentionally to haunt the film with something unexplainable. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it's exactly what it appears to be. A meaningless mistake that became meaningful through interpretation. The greatest art is sometimes like this. Ambiguous, mysterious, open to infinite interpretation. One ghostly reflection became part of movie legend. What was never explained became unforgettable. Fact number 3. The original cut. That was Welles's real vision. After the studio released Touch of Evil, Welles wasn't happy. They'd cut some scenes, they'd added things he didn't want, they'd rearranged moments. Years later, somebody found Welles's original cut, the version he'd truly intended. It was different from what the world knew. Some scenes were longer, some were shorter. The order was different. The pacing was different. When people saw Welles's original version, they understood something important. Every choice matters. The version the studio released was already great. But Welles's version was something else entirely. It was even darker, even more complex, even more honest. This original cut was restored and released decades later. Audiences could finally see what Welles actually made before the studio changed it. It was like discovering a hidden masterpiece. This proved something crucial about filmmaking. Art happens in the details. One scene 3 minutes earlier changes everything. One cut instead of another changes meaning. The director's original vision matters because it's whole and intentional. What Welles made was perfect. What the studio released was good, but perfect and good are different things. Fact number 2. The movie nearly destroyed Welles's career, but it also saved it. Touch of Evil wasn't a commercial success when it came out. The studio barely promoted it. Critics were confused by it. Some people loved it, but not enough people to make it profitable. This failure hurt Welles. The studio became nervous about him. They stopped trusting him. They stopped giving him big budgets. His career slowed down. But then something strange happened. Decades later, film critics and film schools started studying Touch of Evil. They realized it was brilliant. They realized it was ahead of its time. They realized Welles had been right all along. The movie went from failure to masterpiece. It went from box office disaster to artistic triumph. Welles's reputation was rescued by time. Young filmmakers studied his techniques. Universities taught his methods. He became legendary. So, Touch of Evil almost destroyed his career in the short term, but ultimately defined his legacy. Sometimes the world isn't ready for genius when it arrives. Sometimes genius has to wait for the world to catch up. Welles's movie was too strange, too dark, too challenging for its time. But that's exactly why it became immortal. What looked like failure was actually the seed of forever success. Fact number 1. It's actually a love story hidden inside a crime story. This is the final truth about Touch of Evil. On the surface, it's a dark crime movie about corruption and murder and guilt. It's a thriller. It's dangerous. It's ugly and complicated. But underneath, there's a love story. There's a husband and wife trying to stay connected while darkness separates them. There's a man trying to prove something to his wife. There's a woman trying to trust her husband even though the world suggests she shouldn't. The real drama isn't the crime plot. The real drama is love being tested by evil. The real question isn't who committed the murder. The real question is whether love survives corruption. This is why Touch of Evil touches people so deeply. It's not just about crime. It's about what happens when the person you love has to face impossible choices. It's about believing in someone when everyone else doubts them. It's about connection being tested by darkness. Welles understood that crime stories are just the setting. The real story is always human. The real story is always about love being tested. Every scene of corruption is really a scene about a relationship struggling to survive. What looked like a thriller was actually a love story told in the language of crime and shadows. That's why it's great. That's why people remember it. That's why it will live forever. Bonus fact: the secret reels that disappeared and came back. For years, some of the original footage from Touch of Evil was lost. Entire reels disappeared from the studio vaults. Nobody knew where they went. Some people thought they were destroyed. Some people thought they were hidden. For decades, the film was incomplete. Then, in the early 2000s, the lost reels were discovered in a warehouse. They'd been sitting in boxes, forgotten, ignored, gathering dust. When they were found, film restorers became excited. These reels contained footage that had been missing for nearly 50 years. They contained moments that fans had never seen. When the complete version was reassembled, it was like rediscovering a lost masterpiece piece by piece. Every frame that came back was a gift. This story is important because it shows that art isn't always finished when we think it is. Sometimes art gets lost and comes back changed. Sometimes what seems destroyed can be recovered. Sometimes mysteries have answers, even if it takes decades to find them. The lost reels of Touch of Evil prove that great work doesn't disappear completely. It waits. It hides. It comes back when the world is ready to receive it again. Old tools, new magic. Touch of Evil is more than just a movie about crime and corruption. It's a film about one man's refusal to compromise his vision, even when the world doubted him. It's about courage hidden inside darkness. It's about a group of people creating something impossible through dedication and trust. Every weird fact we discovered today tells the same story. Great art requires believing in yourself even when nobody else does. Orson Welles believed, his actors believed, his crew believed, and now, 66 years later, we still believe. We believe because the film proves it with every frame. This movie teaches us that the most interesting ideas are the ones that scare people at first. The most memorable images are the ones that break the rules. The greatest stories are the ones told with darkness and honesty instead of comfort and lies. When you watch Touch of Evil, you're not just watching a thriller. You're watching someone refuse to make easy choices. You're watching an entire team of artists say yes to something hard instead of settling for something easy. That's the real magic. That's what makes a movie immortal. If you enjoyed these stories from behind the scenes of filmmaking, subscribe for more. Every movie hides a truth, and we'll keep uncovering them, one story at a time. Thank you for joining us by this campfire of stories. The next time you watch Touch of Evil, you'll see it differently. You'll see the 3-minute opening shot and think of all the trying and failing and trying again. You'll see Charlton Heston and remember the makeup that changed him. You'll see the shadows and remember the cinematographer inventing new light. You'll see the river at the end and remember Welles fighting for his vision. You'll see a masterpiece and understand the human hearts that built it. That's the real story, not just what's on screen, but what happened behind it. Keep watching. Keep learning. Keep discovering.